Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today, we will be having an in-depth discussion of the FFTCG 2024 World Championship decks. This is a product that was released in late August of this year and retails at around $50 in most big stores, although I have seen it as low as $30 to $35 in some online stores. So shop around, see what works for you. This deck, for those who don't know, contains a copy of both decks that were used by the winner of the 2024 World Championship, and they are both legal for tournament play right out of the box. You can use the cards in here for any tournament. This is perhaps the best introductory product I have ever seen for a card game in my 20 years of playing TCGs. There are two common questions that I see from new players when bringing this deck up. Number one is this product worth it? And the answer to that is a very simple and resounding yes. Not only is there a ton of monetary value, since this deck reprinted cards that individually used to go up to like $40 a piece for a card, meaning like something like this Clive right here. That used to be like a $30, $35 a piece card, and this deck contains 3 copies of it, and that's without including the other 90-something cards in it. But the cards themselves are staples, which you will see in multiple decks. In fact, the winner of the 2025 World Championship used a variation of both of these decks, of monster decks. It was a mono water monster, but used a lot of the same cards, and a Warrior of Light deck. So if we have a 2025 championship deck this year, it will include a lot of the cards that you have in this product. So why not get a head start with this one? And the number 2 most common question is, well, I already have it. How do I play it? This is a little harder to describe in a short paragraph, so I thought it would be useful to have a more in-depth dive for each deck, the play patterns, the goal of each one, and in-depth card discussion of all the individual choices. Obviously, I'm not the creator of these decks, nor the person who played them to the championship, so this is based on my experience with these decks and playing with and against them. I'll do a couple of disclaimers right now. Number 1, this video assumes that you know the basics of how to play the game. If people are interested in an updated how to play the Final Fantasy TCG, at various levels of play, let me know. I would be happy to work on those videos because I would love to see new faces play this game. Number 2, these decks were built for a best of 3 2-deck format, which is the format for high-level competitive play, usually at a national and world level. Your weekly locals and smaller tournaments will usually run best of 1 single deck. So after this video, feel free to adjust the decks as needed, swapping cards from one or the other, because you'll see that they share colors. And I will make a note on what that might look like at the end of the video. So with that out of the way, let's start with the first deck, which is Monsters. Before I start, thank you again to the folks at Materia Hunter. If you are looking for anything related to the game, deck list, card list, and this little section that I just learned about, the product section, which tells you what is upcoming, which decks are, starter decks you can purchase, when everything got released, what are the monthly promo cards. You can go in here, like for example, I went to the Champions deck, and here are both lists. So fantastic use. All right, starting with Firewater Monsters. This was one of the decks ran by the champion Hara in 2024. And this is, I think, the deck that kind of stumps the most people at a glance because of what we're used to seeing. When you first play the game, you're used to seeing decks with a high forward summon count and backup count, but not many monsters, right? Like most decks that are not realm decks specifically play a very low or 0 count of monsters, but you open this list and you see 13 monsters and you say, what do I do with these, and why are there so many one-ofs? All right, so the first thing to note about all monsters decks is that this card, this little girl here, is an incredible card. Since Opus 11, this has been in every tournament ever, and she only gets better as they print more monsters. Why? Well, when Realm enters the field, you may search for up to 2 monsters, one of cost 1 and one of cost 2, and play them straight into the field. At the end of each of your turns, you choose a forward opponent controls. If you control 5 or more monsters, return it to its owner's hand. So reading this card explains and it should let you see, what the goal of the deck is. It is to somehow load your deck with a bunch of monsters and play this card and get them straight from your deck into the field. You don't have to draw them, you don't have to cast them, so she provides an insane amount of value. Now, there are various ways to build monsters. There's ways in which the monsters that you search with her are monsters that draw you a card. So effectively, you search 2 monsters, put them on the field, draw 2 cards. This version of the deck, however, actually is built around an engine, which is mostly this card, Atomos. You'll see that this is the only win card in the deck, and the reason we run it is because Realm does not care about color. Casting her, you can search for any monster as long as it costs 1 or 2 and play it straight onto the field. So the first thing that we want to be doing is searching and casting this Atomos as soon as we find that Realm. Why? Atomos says during each turn, when you cast the second card you've cast that turn, you choose up to 2 backups and activate them. At damage 3, he also has an effect where by paying 0, you can turn him into a forward as well, with an ability that when he attacks, he activates all the backups you control. So, why is this card so good? What this card allows us to do is to play a lot of cheap cards, or cards that may not be cheap but draw you cards, so they are effectively cheap. Remember that in this game, since you discard cards for CP, every card you draw effectively reduces the cost of the card you just play. For example, if you play a 3 cost card like Witch of Defense, which says when she enters the field, if you control a monster, draw 1 card. While you did pay 3 for her, you gained 2 CP back by drawing a card, so she effectively costs 1. Now add to that Atomos activating 2 backups, and you'll see that this deck encourages us to play 2 cards a turn for essentially free. Either those cards make us draw a card, or they let us activate Atomos, which activates 2 backups and refunds some of that CP. So while you see a lot of these cards that cost 4, that cost 5, with Atomos in play and the fact that they draw cards, each of these cards might as well cost 1 CP or 2 at most, right? So that is not immediately obvious when looking at the deck list, but once you start playing the deck, you'll see that you end the turn with more cards in hand than you would think by the cost of these cards. So the deck revolves, like I said, around getting the Realm and Atomos engine, and the second monster that we play alongside Realm, because we have to find a 1 cost as well, is normally this Goblin. This Goblin, when it enters the field, you may search for 1 Job Goblin and add it to your hand. Then he has an effect where you can sacrifice him to choose a forward and deal 3,000 damage. But the important part is that this is a 1 cost card that searches for a card. So a 1 cost card that gives us 2 CP back. Which are our targets for that Goblin? Number 1 is himself. He is a Job Goblin. So this Goblin can search another one, then you can play that one, search another one, then you can play that one and search a third Goblin. So you can see now that this Goblin helps us trigger this first condition for Atomos, which is you need to cast 2 cards. We'll cast a Goblin, search a Goblin, cast another Goblin. You untap 2 backups, or you activate 2 backups to use the turn for this game. Those Goblins were effectively free. In fact, they gained you CP by drawing you another card. So what is the end card that we want to search with these, right? We search 2 of these for some reason. What are our other options? Number 1 is a 1 CP Goblin that is really good when you use sacrifices, give a forward haste, and draw a card. So effectively, again, card draw. But most importantly, it's a backup. Princess Goblin. She is a Job Goblin, 2 CP. When she enters the field, you may search for 1 light forward and add it to your hand. When a light forward enters your field, you do have to sacrifice it. But you will notice there are no light forwards in the main deck. There is a light forward in the limit break decks, and we will talk about being careful of that. But in the main deck, there's no light forwards. Why is that? We're not looking to use her effect to search anything. All we want is a backup that is searchable via our very, very cheap Goblin. So the rest of the deck is built around, like I said, cheap, efficient forwards and cheap, efficient monsters that handle our opponent's board while developing ours, and eventually having a critical mass of attackers that in 1 or 2 turns can swing for game and deal 7 damage to our opponent. The second best card in Realm decks, arguably, is Witch of Defense. Witch of Defense is such a incredible card. Just this card existing makes a lot of decks almost unplayable. Witch of Defense, not only when she enters the field, she draws you a card. So, like we said, for a 3 CP, she's effectively 1 CP. But she also has an effect where you can put one monster into the break zone, you choose a forward, and it loses 7,000 power until the end of the turn. So every monster that you play that you drew you a card turns into a bullet. She takes all of these goblins that, yes, they have a sacrifice itself to do 3,000 damage, but why do that when you can sacrifice it to deal 7,000 damage? This is an action ability that she can use multiple times a turn during both turns, and does not require her to dull or anything. So immediately, as soon as she comes in, she can sacrifice your monsters and shoot them at your opponent. Losing power is the best sort of removal there is. It gets around forwards that cannot break. It also makes it so even if the forwards are big, let's say you have a 9,000 power forward, that forward can never block or attack into you since she can just reduce the power. And you can block with a cheap, a little guy and kill it. So, which is a fantastic card, and it's the second card that we want to see, usually when we have our monsters established. Clive Ifrit. It's just a really good fire card. I think most fire decks run this card. Haste, 4 CP, first effect doesn't matter. Job icon forwards and dominant forwards, other than himself getting 1,000 power. We don't run anything else. Most decks don't run anything else, so that line of text is moot. But when Clive deals damage to your opponent, discard your hand and draw 2 cards. Really cool. Way to refuel if you go on an all-in turn, which we'll discuss later, that this effectively says draw 2 cards. And then with Clive, Clive also has the priming effect. Priming, for those who don't know, you pay that cost, and then you search for an Ifrit and play him on top of the Clive. The Clive then becomes this Ifrit. This Ifrit also has card named Clive. It will be card named Clive and card named Ifrit if you prime into him. And Ifrit is, I think, the best removal in the game, or one of the best removals in the game still. When he enters the field, or deals damage to your opponent, or when Clive primes into him. So if you cast him from hand, if you prime into him, and when he deals damage to your opponent, you choose a forward opponent controls and you deal it 10,000 damage. So you see that Clive priming into Ifrit, kills something, swing that same turn because he had haste, hit you, deal 10,000 to something else, kills 2 forwards for effectively, 6 CP, 4 for Clive, and then 2 for the priming. Then he has a special ability, Spit Flare. Choose 1 forward, deal 10,000 damage. You can do that by just discarding an Ifrit, or if it's primed into Clive, that Ifrit also counts a card named Clive. So you can discard Clives for that effect. So you see, a very cheap removal engine. Gao, it's a good one-off. Cost required to cast him is reduced by 1 for each monster. Then when he enters, you choose a forward opponent controls with cost equal to or less than the number of monsters you control, and put it at the bottom of his owner's deck. He can also dull himself to turn a monster into a forward. It's a good one-off. To note, in this particular deck, there are decks that'll run 3 copies of the Scout. In this particular deck, this runs 1 because you will sack a lot of these monsters to Witch of Defense. So normally you don't have the 5 monsters necessarily by the time Gao comes in. So it can be a little counterproductive to have a game plan which is around sacrificing monsters and a card that cares about having monsters on the field. That being said, he is a great card that can just close games. Tidus is our one of the last forwards to talk about. He is a 4 CP EX. When he enters, choose a forward, a cost 4 less opponent controls, return it to its owner's hand. He's also EX Burst, so he does it on EX Burst. When a character opponent controls is returned from the field to its owner's hand, you draw a card. This effect will trigger once per turn. Again, another, we talked about this costs 4, but effectively draws you a card on entry if he bounces something, and then continuously will repeat that if you bounce your opponent's forwards with other cards. And we do see that this deck runs a monster that does exactly that. This monster will bounce on entry, and it also has an actual ability to bounce a card from your opponent. And we run also Tros, which is, it has the same text as Tita's. When you bounce something, you draw a card, and then at damage 3, he attacks and bounces something. So you'll see here how you have a really big secondary engine of returning things to your opponent's hand to draw cards. Finally, can't not talk about Fire Water without talking about Firion, the best dual color for these colors, and perhaps the best dual color ever. If you control 5 or more characters, Firion gains haste, and when he attacks, draw a card. Then you have an ability to discard a card and buff him by 2,000. If the card is fire, he gains first strike. If the card is water, you can activate him. If the card is both, meaning another copy of himself, then you get both effects. He becomes a 9,000 first strike. But the important part is this card cares about characters and draws us cards. Monsters are characters. Therefore, Realm, playing 2 monsters, already gives you 3 characters for him. This Firion will be online a lot of the time. And we'll see, again, in the play patterns, how we play around that. The summons, we have this Leviathan. This is a cancel Leviathan. It just, if you cast them, you may remove 10 water cards from your breaks of the game. Choose one auto ability triggered from a forward. And you can cancel its effect. If you paid the extra cost, which is removing the 10 water cards, that most likely will never happen. And that forward is on the field, you return that forward to its owner's hand. So really nice. You trigger Tita's. We don't have that much water, so often you will just use this for a cancel. I will talk about this, but this card, if this was a 1-deck format, this would be another card called Amaterasu, which is on the other deck, right? So this is what I talked about. These decks are optimized for best of 3 2-deck, in which both decks cannot share cards. This is a card it's good, but it could be better if you're playing it as a 1-deck, right? And the next card is 6 CP Leviathan. This is the best EX in the game, I think, up to this date. You choose 2 of the 3 following actions. Choose a forward opponent controls. You return it to its owner's hand. Hey, we get to draw cards with Titus. Choose a light or dark forward. Put it at the top or bottom of its owner's deck. And then choose a water forward in your break zone. Add it to your hand so we can get those witches back. That usually, we have 2 of her. Get her back with this Leviathan. Normally, we're not hard casting this. We're just using it for the EX. But sometimes there are situations, especially if you have a Titus or a Tros in play, which you can't do it because they will draw you a card and then you'll return a water card, a water forward from your breaks into your hand. So effectively, you draw 2 cards off of it, right? So when playing this deck, again, you're looking at cards in a different way and how much value they provide as opposed to how much they cost up front, right? We already discussed the goblins. Quadav, this was a meta call. There is a lot of decks that are the focus on building a really big board of little forwards early. And in those cases, if your opponent builds that board very quickly, you can realm into Quadav and bomb. Instead of getting your engine in order to survive, because bomb will choose a forward, deal 5,000 damage. Usually this is like against knight players, which will play like 2 5,000 cost 2 drops fairly quickly. And what you can do is you realm, bomb, kill one of the 5 drops, and then Quadav forces them to sacrifice the others 2 drops, so they're left with like 1 forward on the field, and you can stabilize and then continue your game plan. Sometimes, and this is true for every deck, this deck has a plan like every deck, but oftentimes you have to respond to what your opponent is doing in order to not die immediately, right? We can't focus on one game plan and just lose the game because our opponent is doing things that counter our game plan or don't let us develop it as we want to. So this deck does have a little bit of a tech for those aggressive decks. Blue Worm, a fantastic card. I was actually very surprised to see this at 1. I like this card at 2 or 3. When Blue Worm enters the field, you draw a card. Again, free card. And for 0 until the end of the turn, he becomes a 4 with 6,000 power. At the end of the turn, you have to break him. You can only use this ability once per turn. So this card will sit there. You cast it or play it off of Realm. Draw a card, and then he will sit there until the time where you have to end the game, and then he'll kill your opponent. Tomos, we talked about. Tros, we talked about. And Phoenix, this is just a very good standard fire monster. It is a 9,000 power monster. When he enters, choose a forward dealing 9,000 damage, just straight up kill. most things in the game, and then you can remove 4 cards till you break some from the game, and until the end of the turn he becomes a forward with 9,000 powers. This is a very, very sticky monster that's hard to remove, hard to attack around, and he just keeps like swinging out for damage every turn. I love this card. I think most fire decks that I run a copy of this guy, even if I'm not on monsters. Backups are pretty simple. We have some EX bursts. VV helps us remove the aforementioned cards that are also removed by bomb, like Lastwell, etc. Porum and Palom are searchable off of Leonora, so this is a backup engine in which you find one of these and you find one of these two, and you can play 2 backups. Again, we want to be at least 2 to 3 backups to abuse our Atomos activate trigger. Verena does the same. Verena searches for a goblin, so she can search Princess Goblin or any of these guys. If you have this card, feel free. I know we mentioned the realm into Goblin and to Princess Goblin, but if you have this card, just search for the Princess Goblin and play her, and then Goblin searches another Goblin. It's okay. Again, we adapt our plan based on what we have in hand. Yosef is a way to search Furion, and also an EX Burst. Merlwyb is an EX Burst. Draw 2, then discard a card from hand. It's a way to dig for our realms and the cards that we need. Hilda, it's just a generic 4 CP draw card. At damage 5, she can bring back a forward at cost 3 or less from your break zone into the field, so meaning Witch of the Fence most of the time. Really good. So at damage 5, you play this, draw a card, play Witch, draw a card, and then kill your monsters to kill your opponent. And finally, Larsa is the best searcher. Searcher backup in the game. It searches any forward that costs 4 or more and adds it to your hand, which means this is our only direct way to search Realm. You can also search the one-off Gao, Clive, Tidus, etc., but most of the time, we're using this to search Realm early. Red Mage, I believe this is a target for Luso. It's a standard unit that we can search off of LB Luso. All right, so that we discussed every card. So what are the play patterns that we want to go for? Okay, well, that will, like every deck, it will depend. But like I mentioned, your goal is to resolve a realm, and that realm to get you an Atomos and usually a Goblin, depending on what your opponent is doing. It could be a Sahagin, etc. But most of the time, it's realm for Atomos and Goblin. So I'll give you an example of why that line is so powerful. And what it looks like in action. So let's say you're going first, okay? You're going first and you have a Larsa. You don't care what else you have in your hand. You see a Larsa, you see no other backups, and you see that you have either a Furion or a Clive in hand. Well, this is a line that you could do if you know that your opponent doesn't have too many ways to interrupt it. Your turn 1 would be to search Realm. Let's say turn 2, you didn't draw any backups. You can easily, using that Larsa, pitching 2 cards, play Realm. Realm will search and play Atomos and Goblin, right? And this counts as your first cast for Atomos. Atomos does not have to see the first card you cast. He only cares that you cast 2 cards that turn and that he's there to see the second one, so that in order to trigger him. Okay, and importantly, this is a difference between casting and playing. Casting means that you pay for the card and play it from your hand. Playing these via Realm's effect does not count as casting. Your cast is Realm. So cast 1, Realm, searches and plays onto the field the Atomos and the Goblin. The Goblin will trigger. When it enters the field, it searches for a Job Goblin. You search Princess Goblin. Then we cast Princess Goblin by pitching a fire card from our hand and casting her. That is your second cast, which will trigger Atomos, and Atomos will activate both of your backups, which are dull. The Princess Goblin came in dull just by casting her, and the Larsa, you dulled it to play Realm. So turn 2, this is what your board looks like. You have a Realm, 2 monsters, 2 active backups, and 2 cards in hand. That is insane on turn 2. That is so much value. And keeping cards in hand, incredible. Now, this line of play, you usually want to go for it if you have one of these cards in hand. Why these? Is preferably Furion. Why? Because Furion cares about having 5 characters in play. You have 5 and himself 6. You can dull these two, cast his Firion, he'll come in with haste, he attacks, he draws you a card. So you will then have Firion here as well, and still 2 cards in hand. That's really good. Alternatively, you could cast Clive and swing. You'll discard 1 card potentially. So what you might want to do is maybe search for another goblin that's not Princess Goblin if you're going to go that route. And draw 2 cards. And when he hits your opponent, you draw 2 cards. But preferably, this line is a Firion line. And I would mostly go for it if I already have the Firion in hand. It could also work if you have something like you end with a Blue Worm. That's fine. You don't get to attack, but you do get to play your monster and draw your card. The important thing is that you have a board in which you have a lot of things to enable both your Atomos engine and your future Firions and cards in hand, which means that next turn you'll go up to 4 cards in hand and you have infinite amount of options to play. The cool thing about Firion being the play here as well is that immediately you enable Ultima Weapon. Ultima Weapon from Limit Break, when Ultima Weapon enters the field, you choose 1 forward. If you control 4 or more fire characters, you deal it 9,000 damage. When it enters the field, if you control 4 or more water characters, your opponent selects 1 forward they control, put it in the break zone. If you do this play and your play is Firion, you have 1, 2, 3 water characters, 1, 2, 3 fire characters. Ultima counts as a fire and a water character, so you'll have 4 of each. You kill 2 forwards of your opponent. So your opponent can't play a forward into this unless it is to kill that Firion, right? So really cool. But this deck can also take it slower. Let's say your starting hand is... let me go back real quick. 2 cards in hand is assuming you went first. If you went second, you'll have 3. So, important to note. Another line that you could do. Let's say you open Leonora and you have a realm in hand already or something like that. You could go turn 1, Leonora, you search and you cast Palom. So you'll have 2 backups, 2 cards in hand. Turn 2, you can pitch a card. Or you can dull the Leonora, pitch 2 cards, play Realm. Realm will search and play Atomos and Goblin. Goblin will search Goblin. You search this Goblin, then you cast it by dulling the Palom, which will be active. Okay, this Goblin will then search Princess Goblin and trigger Atomos. This is your second cast. Atomos will activate both of your backups, and then you can dull those 2 backups to play the Princess Goblin that you search. This is what your board would look like in that case. Now, you will have 1 less card in hand. That with the other play, however, you will have an additional backup and an additional monster. Having 3 backups is really important because that means that if we draw Witch, she is on curve. You don't have to discard a card to play her. Or if we don't draw anything good, we can Leo from Limit Break by, again, not discarding anything and draw a card. Keep in mind as well, casting cards from Limit Break or Limit Break cards count as a cast for Atomos. So we establish our board. What do we do next? This is where a little bit of game knowledge will come in. You will play based on what your opponent is playing. Most of your cards are either draw engines or removal. If your opponent is playing a slow game, putting pressure with hasty forwards like Firion and Clive is really good. If your opponent is playing a little bit more of a mid-range aggressive game, casting things like Titas, forcing them to bounce their things, drawing cards while you do it, and establishing a board presence, and then swinging out for game. The only time you want to be swinging into your opponent early is potentially with Firion to draw a card, and Clive if you are looking to reset your hand, if you dump your hand and know that you won't get punished for swinging it with Clive, and poke with all of these cards until you have enough damage on board to go for a full swing where you kill your opponent. As we mentioned, Blue Burn and Bomb both can become forwards at any point in the game, but while they're not the forwards, they're very hard to remove. They're monsters. They'll just sit there waiting for an opportunity to swing out. You will build a big board of characters, and then do a big play, either Ultimate Weapon to remove 2 things, or a Tidus LB to also remove 2 things from the field, and then just take complete control of the game. But the important thing is that you know how to navigate the early turns of the game in order to get your realm and Atomos. Oftentimes, you will either not have the realm, or your opponent will put you in a position where you have to do something else. In those cases, building backups is your priority. You want to keep then your Verenas and your Leonoras to search for your other backups, and be able to develop a board of backups that can be used to pay efficiently for your forwards and to eventually efficiently pay for that realm. In the examples that we mentioned before, usually we're playing realm off of 1 backup, but if you have 3 backups, you only need to discard 1 card to play her, right? So that is it's very, I wish I could go more in detail with it, maybe by playing some games, and which would be something that we can do in the future. We could talk about, what the lines of play are based on what your opponent is doing. But you now, hopefully, what is the main goal of the deck and how it enables the engine that makes it the top deck, or one of the top decks in the game at that moment. One of the more difficult aspects to learn, which is really hard to explain without having an entire video on it, is Witch of Defense. Witch of Defense math and knowing when to sack and which monsters to sacrifice for Witch of Defense, and at what point in the game is very important. You will learn to be a little more aggressive with her, meaning casting her just to draw a card and present the threat sometimes. But especially in mirror matches, when there's 2 witches, you have a witch and your opponent has a witch, the game of chicken that is sacrificing monsters to kill things is there's a lot of interaction that happens that is a little bit too advanced for me to cover in this video. But just keep in mind, your realm will build you a big board, and it will enable your Firion, it will enable your Tidus, and you will draw 5 cards a turn, because the realm is just that good of a card. One thing to note as well, finally, is that there is a non-zero amount of damage X matters, like Atomos itself, Tros, and Hilda. So if your opponent is aggressive, you will get extra value out of these cards. And oftentimes what happens is that opponents will not put you at 3 damage to not enable Atomos and Tros, and you're very happy to see that. That then gives you the breathing room you need to start playing your backups and developing your board without fear of dying. Last thing, know when to use your Clive Ifrits. This is a very good thing to do if your opponent overcommits to the board in order to answer, what you're doing. Clive into Ifrit will kill 2 things at basically no cost. So that is it for monsters. That is the overall how to quote unquote play it. Limit breaks are not optimized. Little Leela, Luso, etc. These could be better, but a lot of the limit breaks, or some of the limit breaks that you might want to run, are in the other deck, which we'll discuss. So that is the basics on how to play monsters. Let's then take a look at the other deck, which is Warriors of Light. And here is our other deck. This is Refia Warriors of Light. This deck is a little easier to explain, but a little tricky to navigate as well, depending on what your opponent is doing. However, this is a much more forgiving deck than monsters, just because, as you can see here, we have 28 total EX bursts in the deck. So getting hit is often the thing that you want to be doing. So how do you play this deck? What is the goal of this deck? The goal of this deck is Refia. Refia is a 3 CP, 7,000 power Warrior of Light. At the beginning of the attack phase during each of your turns, you activate all the Job Warrior of Light you control. Note that that does not say forwards, that includes backups as well, as long as they're Job Warrior of Light. When 4 or more dull characters are activated by this effect, you get to draw 1 card. Then she has an action ability which says you dull 4 active Job Warrior of Light. That can include herself, and it is a action ability that does not require her to dull herself, meaning she can do it immediately when she comes in. You choose 1 forward opponent controls, any forward, any cost, you put it either at the top or at the bottom of your opponent's deck. You can only use this ability once per turn. So all that text has to, even if you're new to card games, even if you're new to this game in particular, that has to read really good, right? So what we want to do is get 4 Warriors of Light in play. How do we get 4 Warriors of Light in play? Well, fortunately, there are a lot of Warriors of Light, really good Warriors of Light that we want to be playing, and there's a lot of good backup Warriors of Light, which means that we don't really even need to play forwards to enable Refia. We'll start with the backups just because the way that we enable Refia 90% of the time is via backups. You'll see that this deck runs 19, a little higher than normal. You'll normally see decks hover around 16, 17, 19 is pretty high. And if you see like this year's champion in Refia was on 21 backups. That's how important getting your backups is. So let's start with our Fire Warrior of Light is Luneth. We really don't care much about the text. He does give one of your Warriors of Light haste, but really we just care that he's a 2CP Fire backup Job Warrior of Light for Refia. Lena, one of the best cards ever printed, 2CP EX, Princess / Warrior of Light for some reason. When your opponent uses an EX burst, you draw a card. So when you attack into your opponent and your opponent triggers an EX burst and they say, yes, I am going to trigger that, you get to draw a card. Incredible. Coincidentally, a card that is very good against this deck, right? So in the mirror match, it's pretty good to have this card because this deck has 28 bursts, and every one of those bursts giving your opponent a card makes you think if you really want the effect of that. 3, King Tycoon. When King Tycoon is not a Warrior of Light, but when King Tycoon enters the field, you may search for one card named Ferris or one card named Lena and add it to your hand. Again, doesn't have to be a forward, meaning that this King Tycoon can search this Lena. Claris. When Claris enters the field, you may search for one Job King and add it to your hand. Coincidentally, another EX burst. Coincidentally, we just talked about the King. This is the only King in the deck. So Claris's whole purpose in this deck is to search for King Tycoon. Kryl, 4CP EX, Warrior of Light. When she enters the field, select one of the 2 following actions. You choose a summon in your break zone, add it to your hand, or choose a category 5 forward in your break zone and add it to your hand. We have a ton of summons, and we actually have a category 5 forward in Ferris. So we have both targets for it, and they're both really good targets. Every one of these summons is fantastic. Ferris is perhaps the second best Warrior of Light. EX Burst. What else can I say? Tyro is here to fix colors, 5CP, EX Burst. Most Earth decks will run this. When Tyro enters the field, you may search for one forward, add it to your hand. If he's on the field, he can produce CP of any element. Important because this is 4-color deck. We want to be able to fix our colors. Usually, in an ideal world, you want 3 Warrior of Light backups and 1 Tyro to fix you for the other color. That's the ideal world. But you'll see the alternatives to that. At damage 5, you can choose a forward against 2,000 power till the end of the turn by dulling him. This is something that a lot of people will forget, that he can do that, and you will win games by remembering that you have that effect and your opponent forgetting. Trust me on that. It's happened way too much. Finally, Sarah FFL, very costly at 6 CP. However, when she enters the field, you may search for up to 2 category FFL forwards or Job Warrior of Light forwards and add them to your hand. So while she costs 6, we discussed this in the monster video, she costs 6, but she draws you 2 cards. Effectively, she costs 2. Then you can put her into the break zone, choose a forward, activate it. Effectively, she just searches your best Warriors of Light, meaning Refia and Ferris, or like Refia and Warrior of Light to fix colors, and adds them to your hand. Most of the time, you'll be searching something like Refia Warrior of Light, pitching it for a color for any of these, and then keeping the Refia for when it's time to do Refia things. Zidane is not a warrior like, thankfully, but he is both a dual color card, Fire Wind, which lets us fix our colors. Remember, dual color cards are multicolor cards. Pitch for any of the two elements, or any of their elements. He can pitch for either Earth or Fire CP. And this card's just incredible. He cannot be blocked by a forward that costs 3 or more. He has haste. When he enters the field or attacks, your opponent reveals their hand. You get to pick a card from it, remove it from the game, and your opponent draws a card. There are certain decks that have certain cards. There's like a Chaos Art deck, for example, that is very good against this deck. And Zidane is the way that we beat them. We take the best card out of their hand, or we take the card that beats our deck from their hand, and we don't even have to do it. If you attack into your opponent or you play him, you see your opponent has bad cards in hand, you let them keep them. It doesn't matter. Really good. Mostly for color fixing, but this is the best way to protect your Refia, because your opponent will hold removal, knowing that you're on Warriors of Light. They will hold removal for Refia. You can do something like play Zidane first, let me look at the hand, get rid of anything that can kill my Refia, and then I'll play my Refia once I know that it is safe to do so. Ferris is the reason why people do not attack into this deck. You'll see that, number one, this deck has 28 EX burst. So you attack into this deck, you will hit an EX burst, your opponent will draw a card, search their best forward, etc. And Ferris at damage 3 is an extremely scary card. When she enters the field or attacks, she deals 1000 damage to all forwards. That includes herself. When Ferris or a Job Warrior-like forward you control is dealt damage, you choose up to one forward opponent controls and deal it 3000 damage. And at damage 3, she also gets to search for a Job Warrior of Light other than herself and add it to your hand. This includes backups, includes forward. This card is insane. I'm more terrified of this card than I am of Refia when I play against Refia decks. This is one of the best removals. Keep in mind, you have to be aware of the damage that you potentially deal with her. And the best way to think about it is she deals an odd number of damage to an opponent's forward equal to 3,000 times the amount of Warrior of Light forwards that you control. So if you control, let's say, just one Warrior of Light forward other than herself, you only have a Refia on the field. Ferris enters, she deals 1000 damage to all forwards, which includes your opponent's forwards, right? So everybody has 1000 damage. She dealt 1000 damage to herself and 1000 damage to Refia. So she gets 2 triggers of 3000 damage. Your opponent's forwards already have 1000. Therefore, if you put 3000 and 3000 on top of it, you kill a 7000 power forward. If you have another Warrior of Light, 2 Warriors of Light and then play her, you kill a 10,000 power forward, etc., etc., etc. And you can split that damage again among multiple forwards. So you can do 7,000 to one forward by doing the 1,000 plus 3,000, and then 4,000 to another by doing 3,000 plus the 1,000. So the Ferris math, very important. I'm going to skip to the best. Let me skip to the best. This is Warrior of Light. This is one of the reasons that we're playing this deck. This is the only multi-element card up to today where it's more than 2 colors. He is a 4-color card. You can only pay with CP produced by backups to cast him. He has haste, he has first strike, he has brave, he has 10,000 power. When he enters the field due to your cast, you activate every backup you control and you draw a card. Then he can duel himself to choose a forward and deal it 5,000 damage. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to understand that this is one of the ways that Refia deals with big boards. It is with this Warrior of Light. So why is this Warrior of Light so insanely good? Number one, he can discard for any of those 4 colors. So those anything that you need, most of the time early game you are discarding this card to get your colors, to get your backups. Okay, the number 1 priority of this deck is play backups. Number 2, once you do have 4 backups and those 4 backups can produce these colors, this is a free card in every sense of the word. Not only it untaps the backups that you use to play for him, but he draws you a card, so even replaces himself. This card is completely free, and it's a 10,000 first strike haste brave that kills things via damage. Insane. Arc, there's 4 copies of him here, 3 of this 4-drop, and 1 of this 5-drop. The 4-drop is a really good EX burst. It looks at the top 5 cards of your deck and you add Earth, Water, or Fire card to your hand. Card, not necessarily forward, backup, summon, whatever. If there are 4 more different elements among forwards you control, the forwards you control gain 2,000 power, meaning that if you have just Warrior of Light, every forward you control will gain 2,000 power with this arc. This arc is actually used for 2 things. Early game, digs for backups. And then late game, he's just EX, and EX burst draws you a card, right? But like we said, the main part of the deck is to establish your backups for Refia, and this digs you 5 cards deep for one of those cards. And at any point in the game, once you're established, it digs you for any card you need that's not like a mono wind card, of which there are only 5. So, whoopsie. The other arc is another reason why we don't put this deck at damage 3. When he enters the field, choose up to 2 job standard unit or job warrior light, and you activate them. This again counts backup, so he effectively costs 3 less if you have 3 CP, 3 Warriors of Light backups. But the important thing is that at damage 3, when he enters the field, you choose a job standard unit or Warrior of Light that costs 3 or less in your break zone, and you play it straight onto the field. This can be Refia, or even scarier, Ferris. If you triggered Arc, it means that you're at damage 3 for Ferris as well. So Arc will bring Ferris back. Ferris will deal 1,000 damage and all her stuff, and she will search for a Warrior of Light forward. More than likely Refia, and then GG will go next. He was playing 1 Terra. This is a way to get back summons. I think this is also just to get our fire count just a little bit higher to enable us to play Luneth and stuff pretty quickly. But she's a very, if you're looking for a fire forward that has EX, it fixes your colors, and it has one of the best EXs in the game, Terra is one of them. There's also a really cool combo with her. When Terra enters the field or is put from the field into the break zone, you choose a summon in your break zone. Add it to your hand, and then the cost required to cast your next summon is reduced by 2. By the way, this is all part of the EX, meaning that if you hit it as EX, you get a summon back and it costs 2 less. All summons in your break zone cannot be removed from the game by your opponent's summons or ability. She also does this retrieve a summon effect when she dies. So one of the cool things that you can do, you can see that she has 5,000 power, is that you can kill her with your own Warrior of Light. So you can play the Terra, get a summon back, and then hold this Warrior of Light. And if our opponent does something that we need one of our summons to answer, we kill the Terra in response with Warrior of Light. Terra will get us back the summon, and we get to cast it for 2 less. Speaking of summons, this deck has all the good summons. This is what we talked about, that we can mix some of the summons between this and the other one if we decide to run monsters as our best of 1. I think some of the summons here would rather be in that other deck. Kuchulain the Impure, 1 CP, EX, choose a forward, loses all abilities until the end of turn, draw a card. This is just a generically very, 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 very good summon that you always have to be careful of. Kusith, 2 CP, choose 1 forward or backup in your break zone, add it to your hand. This is 3 more copies of Refia. Brynhilder, 2 CP, EX, choose a forward, deal 5,000 damage if that forward is put from the field to the break zone this turn, draw a card. So either you can kill a small thing and draw a card, or you can kill a big thing by combining that 5,000 damage with Warrior of Light or with Ferris to kill something bigger and also draw a card. So it's a free summon. And the most important cards, or the best summons ever printed, number 1, Mist Dragon. 3 CP, select one of the 3 following actions, remove your opponent's break zone from the game, draw a card. Choose a summon of cost 5 or less, cancel its effect, remove all cards in your opponent's break zone from the game. Sorry, I already said that. Choose a forward you control, dull it during this turn, if still damage, it becomes 0. Instead, and Amaterasu, the best summon, choose 1 auto ability, cancel its effect. Any auto ability from anything. It can be a backup, it can be a forward, it can be a monster, whatever you want to cancel its effect. If the cancel auto ability triggered from a forward, deal that forward 8,000 damage. Okay, we went through all the cards. So how do we play this game? How do we play this deck? The way to play this deck is, number 1, you want to, like we said, and we'll keep saying, we want to establish enough backups to where we can cast our cards without needing to pitch for them. Bonus points is those backups are Warrior of Light backups, because they enable our Refia's secondary effect. So the early game of this deck will normally be spent building up your backup line, either by casting them drawing into them because we have 19 and casting them, or even if we have to search for them via Arc, etc., or a Luna Freya, for example, from LB to dig us into EX backups, we will spend our first 1 or 2 turns just building backups and mostly ignoring what our opponent is doing. And we can afford to do that because we run so many EX bursts that unless our opponent is killing us in 1 turn, them damaging us is actually beneficial to us. That's why we run, I actually forgot to talk about this card, that's why we run Bosch. Bosch actually also lets us search for a backup. When he enters the field, you may receive 1 point of damage. When you do so, search for 1 fire or earth character other than himself and add it to your hand. This is a way to not only self-damage ourselves for Ferris or Arc, and potentially trigger an EX burst, because if you hit an EX burst to damage because of his effect, you will trigger that EX burst. But also, he lets us search for fire or earth characters, meaning any of these backups he can search. Ideally, one of the best hands to keep is a hand with Claris and a wind card. Why? Claris, going turn 1 Claris means that you search this King Tycoon. Turn 2, you dull Claris, pitch the wind card, play King Tycoon, search Lena, play Lena. You're already at 3 colors and 3 backups. Now, unfortunately, those 3 backups are not Warrior of Light. Only one of them is, but you have your colors established. You effectively then want to hold until you get a Luneth or something like that to play and get at least a second Warrior of Light backup. But if you can't and your third backup has to be a Tyro, so be it. We do it and we deal with that later, so to speak. We just play Warriors of Light forwards to enable Refia. The mindset of this should be, I will try to play as many Warriors of Light backups as I can, meaning Cryo, Lena, Luneth, Sarah. But if I cannot, playing backups is still more important than playing Warriors of Light backups. As long as you have your backups, you can then execute your game plan. But why Refia? How do I win the game once I establish this? She removes the forwards, but how do I actually win? Very simple. You win by attacking. I know it sounds dumb, but what Refia allows us to do is effectively negates any forward that your opponent plays. Why? Refia will dull for drop Warriors of Light during your turn, activate them during attack, and then keep them active for when your opponent during their turn plays a forward. You can dull for our Warriors of Light and put it at the top or the bottom of the deck. She does say that she's once per turn, but it's not only during your turn, it's during either player's turn. So Refia, every single turn you and your opponents can kill something. The most important gameplay mechanic that you have to learn with Refia is how priority passing works. When you move from your main phase 1 into the attack step, priority passes to both players. You move into the attack preparation step. Okay. In the attack preparations phase, she will trigger her effect to activate. For all the Warriors of Light you control will trigger, but you can respond to it. Since it is an action, since it is an auto ability, it will go on the stack. So what most people will do is you'll play your Refia main phase 1, right? And you have 4 Warriors of Light, including herself. Let's say you have a board of Refia, Cryo, Lena, Luneth. I'll give you an example. And they're all active. What you can do is you move into attack and you say to your opponent, I will proceed to move into attack, and your opponent has a chance to respond. If they don't, you move into attack preparation. During attack preparation, she will immediately trigger. Refia will say, okay, I'm in attack phase. I will attempt to activate all my Warriors of Light. You can say, I will hold priority, and in response to her activating the Warriors of Light, they're already active. What would I do? You dull all 4 of them to use her ability to put something to the bottom of the or the top. That resolves. You kill your opponent's forward, and then her ability to activate resolves. So you get to activate them, and if you activated 4 of them, which you did because you dulled 4 to activate her action ability, you get to draw a card. So effectively, you're removing a forward and drawing 3 cards a turn. You're 2 for a turn, and an extra card for her. That is how you win the game. You overwhelm your opponent with efficient removal and card draw off of one card. And this card is effectively, we have infinite copies of her, quote unquote. We only have 3 of her, but we also have 3 Kusith, which brings her back to our hand. We have Ferris, which searches her. We have Arc, which brings her from breaks onto the field. We have Lena Special. Lena has a special for water and another copy of herself. You choose a 4 cost for your legs and your break cell, and you play it onto the field dull, which won't matter. Refia will activate herself during combat. At LB, we have Noctis. When Noctis enters the field, choose 1 forward to your break zone, add it to your hand. So it seems weird and counterproductive. And how does a deck win off of 1 forward? You only have 3 copies of it. Really, you have like 10 copies of this card in the deck. They kill her, you bring her back. They kill her, you bring her back. And they have to kill her. That's the problem. Because if they don't, she'll just draw a card every turn and kill everything you play. Right? And more importantly, because she activates your Warrior of Light, especially your backups, you can then hold backups to do interaction, Amaterasu or Mist Dragon. Cancel anything that your opponent is doing to try to answer your board or your Refia. So there is so much efficiency that, like I said, not only because she draws you a card by activating 4 Warriors of Light, but because you activate backups, she effectively gains you 4, 5, 6 CP at a turn just for existing. And that CP, that extra CP, is used for interaction. Amaterasu, Mist Dragon, Kuchling. You hold all these summons in your hand and wait to use them at the required time. You don't have to interact with your opponent unless you are required to, and you will always have the CP to do it. Warrior of Light is another way that we answer good things, or we answer multiple forwards with Refia. Because Refia activates every job Warrior of Light, you can dull Warrior of Light to choose a forward, deal it 5,000, activate it with Refia during attack phase, attack with him, dull him again, in response to the attack, dull him again to deal 5,000 to something else. So effectively, this card also kills a 10,000 power forward every turn as long as Refia is on the field. So how do you beat this? By just playing forwards? The answer is you don't. You have to have an answer to this card. You have to be able to kill this deck by taking them from 2 damage to 7 damage most of the time, because if you take them anywhere from 3 to 6, Ferris, searching a card, searching the Refia, playing the Refia, and doing all of the things will just beat you, or Arc reviving it, right? And if you put them to 2, you have if your opponent puts you to 2 damage, you have the option to Bosch to put yourself to 3 damage, and again do the Ferris Arc things. That, really, really, it's actually really easy to explain how this deck works. In practice, what you will see is that what you play and when you play it will depend on what your opponent is doing. Like I say that for every deck. But there are matchups where trying to go for an early Warrior of Light is really good because he just stops everything that your opponent is trying to do when you put that big body in there. There are matchups which you're going to have to play off of 2-3 backups to Refia just to start doing the thing before you develop your 4th. There are matchups in which you will play a couple of Warrior of Light forwards, and instead of playing this Warrior of Light, you will play the LB Warrior of Light, which says if you must control 3 or more job standard units or job Warrior Lights to cast them, but he protects all your forwards. The forwards other than Warrior of Light you control gain this forward cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities, and if this forward is dealt damage by your opponent's abilities, the damage becomes 0 instead. Sometimes you will have enough cards where you can do something like a turn where you play like Arc into Ferris, search Refia, play Refia, and then you play this Warrior of Light to protect it, right? It all depends on your board state. And that's it. That's all there is to it. This card is so good, and you'll see this if you go look at the 2025 World Champion. That deck ran 21 backups, and this card lets you win games in which all you're doing is drawing backups, because you draw so many cards that every interaction that you draw and every limit break that you play costs you nothing, while you're taking away everything that your opponent is doing via her or the interaction that you're playing alongside her, Miss Dragon, Amaterasu, Kuchulain. And that's it. That's how we play this deck. We build our backups, we play our Refia, and force our opponent to answer her multiple times. You play her, Kusith. Keep in mind the passing of priority between phases. Keep in mind also that one of the, I think, more important things to know is when to put the forward that you're removing with Refia at the top or at the bottom. It's really good that she puts things at the top, because that means if you're going to attack into your opponent, putting a forward on top that doesn't have EX burst means that you guarantee that that hitting your opponent will not do anything. She's the best removal in the game in that sense. She puts a forward into your opponent's damage zone, so your opponent cannot interact with that forward. It's not in the deck. It's not in the break zone. It's in the damage zone. There's no interaction there. So yeah, that's how you play these decks. Like I mentioned, these are optimized for playing in best of 3 2-deck formats, meaning that they do not share cards. If you want to use these for your locals, I highly suggest that you swap some of the summons and limit breaks from either or. I think putting Lena in monsters, putting Kuchulain in monsters, and Amaterasu is correct. You should be putting these cards. You can even slot in that Terra if you want it, if you run enough summons. But normally what you want to be doing is removing that Leviathan for this Amaterasu, and finding maybe some space for Lena. And potentially just putting this Zac. Actually, no, not potentially. You move this Zac from this deck to the monsters deck, because he's very good with Witch, which, minus 7k to something, and then you can Zac 3k to kill a big forward. And on the other side, if you want to play this deck as your best of 1, I would suggest that you play Leo LB here, cutting maybe one of the Zacs for that Leo, so you can draw a card normally. And actually, I think that's the only thing. I think this deck only cut Leo for to be fully powered. Monsters had a lot more concessions to make to enable Refia to be a full power deck in this 2-deck format. So yeah, that's what I would do. If you play monsters, bring one of these Zacs with you. Bring the Lenas, bring the Amaterasus. You could potentially bring the Kuchulains if you want. But there is some what's it called? Good interactions with the 6 CP Levy, of bouncing with the Tidus and the Tros, where I would not remove that card. But you could, if you wanted to play Kuchulain instead. Just find what fits your playstyle and play that. So yeah, that's it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Enjoyed me yapping for a little bit, and hopefully this helped you understand how to basically play each deck out of the box. The best teacher is to just play. So find someone to play with, either locally or online using something like Octagon, and grind games. I can teach you what the basics of each, but nothing will teach you more than actually playing the game, losing a bunch of games until it clicks for you and you say, this is how this deck is supposed to run. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want me to make more of these where we go over some decks, maybe some gameplay, let me know. If you want me to talk about the basics of the game, more advanced things, I also have some of those videos in mind to make. And I hope to see everybody at locals. I don't mind playing against these decks over and over again, as long as we get more people playing. And these decks will teach you how to play the game at an advanced level, so then you can play anything you want and have fun with it, and potentially just take your locals, and who knows, maybe beyond that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.